Why are investors not giving the airlines credit for basically having a pretty solid outlook?
Well, I think one of the challenges the last couple of years have been margins have been declining in the industry, brought on by the rapid increases in fuel price. Next year, we're looking for margin stability, actually margin growth out of Delta. I think the industry should probably also be able to see some margin growth. Fourth quarter this year, we're going to be reporting our margins are going to grow about 100 basis points. So we're at a good exit velocity going into 2019.
You've got that jet fuel expectations, and we know that this can change wildly, but what, in that $60 to $70 range is what you guys think?
Yeah, we're building a plan for 65 to 70, and if it fell from there, we'd be upside to us, but reality is that we're cautious on the outlook there.
Ed, part of the issue is you've been incredibly disciplined heading into higher fuel prices, dealing with that. It's a weird theory, but Wall Street's a little concerned that the airlines writ large are not capable of handling with fuel prices declines. They're worried that you guys will get stupider and start adding a bunch of new flights and other things because you think things will get easier. What do you say to that?
Well, one of the challenges was a few years ago, that's exactly what happened. So there was some basis for their skepticism. Oil prices then were at the $100 mark. They fell all the way down to $30. That proved to be fairly dysfunctional for the industry, and you're right, a lot of capacity came in that didn't sustain itself as fuel prices started to march up. You know, the one thing about fuel prices, they're right back to where we started the year at. So it's not as if we've had this massive fall in fuel prices. It's only back to the beginning of the year. We haven't changed our capacity expectations for next year based on the fall, and I think the industry probably will stay disciplined.
But the problem, the reason that these fears came up again was a week and a half ago when you talked to Wall Street. You said that unit revenue was going to come in at the lower end of expectations. I think that's what kind of sparked things. What's your answer to that?
Well, we came in about 50 basis points. We guided to a quarter of 3 to 5%. We're coming in 3.5%. So anytime with the street, you always have to miss to the upside unless they think it's a miss, even though it was in the guidance range.
Why do you think there's been no new entrant in the past couple of years, as actually as the big four have actually succeeded? There has been no sort of Richard Branson kind of person who's sort of emerged with some kind of newfound airline trying to get into some market. What do you think's happened there?
There's a high capital cost to enter. Certainly, with the challenges over time, there's been a lot of capital lost in this industry. So I think people are a bit cautious.
Slots are taken, and so just.
Well, I think the slots are taken as part of this. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Ed, because I think you take a look at what you've seen with some of these lower-cost European airlines as they've brought flights into certain markets. I think the airlines, the traditional airlines, Delta included, have been much more aggressive about saying, oh, no. You're just not going to start bringing in low-cost flights into a particular market. We will respond in kind. Am I correct? You guys are, not just you, but all the airlines are much more aggressive about saying we're protecting our market share.
Yeah, we've been very aggressive in the marketplace with not only market share, but you're right, the slots are an issue. Congestion in the skies in the U.S., it's very difficult to find space to launch a new platform from. You're seeing it in Europe, you're seeing it in other parts of the world, but it's been challenging.
We should also mention Ash Carter, our guest host today, is a board member, and Delta's the only board you serve on.
I am a proud board member because he's talking about Delta's performance, which I admire, and management that I admire. But the reason I joined is it's got a great corporate culture. Take good care of employees. It's a little bit like, it has the kind of the culture of the Defense Department, which I loved so much. Complicated, global, but kind of got family heart to it. So, but in full disclosure, I also am a board member there. Let me ask you, Ed, about something, just picking up on the last question, tying it to world affairs. Another big issue has been the Middle East carriers coming into the United States and into Europe especially, and kind of bending the rules a little bit in order, and they're subsidized. So we were talking about China earlier and state subsidies and uneven playing fields and so forth. You've been pretty active in that space. Delta has been speaking out for the airlines, which I think is appropriate and good, and I think gotten some help from the government.
Well, the administration has been responsive to our concerns. The Middle Eastern airlines are wholly owned by their governments. They've subsidized to tens of billions of dollars. If we want to see the U.S. airlines grow, particularly internationally, we have to have a level playing field. The administration did a very nice job the first part of the year responding to that and getting the Middle Eastern airlines to not only acknowledge the fact that there's lack of transparency about their results, but make certain that they're not going to launch new routes into the States from other countries other than the Middle East, using those subsidies.
Do you think that they're still losing money on those routes?
Absolutely.
Are you losing money on any of those routes?
Well, we don't fly to them. We don't fly to the Middle East.
But on what might be described as competitive routes, meaning you may not be flying through Dubai, but there are people who are using Dubai as a hub to get to another location that you do fly to.
Oh, we fly direct to many destinations. In fact, we're going to go back into India now, which we walked away from because of the amount of money we were losing because of the subsidies. Now we're able to go back into Mumbai direct from the U.S. We don't need to stop in Dubai or in Doha to get there.
Ed, you've talked about additional boarding classes that you're going to have. I think it's going up to 8 boarding classes now from 6 that are existing right now. What is that a recognition of? Ways to kind of entice people to pay for the higher class seats?
No, it really is just, you know, the boarding process is one of those things at the airport that's still a stress point, and it's not a good process, and we need to find better ways to continue to get people on board. Certainly your higher paying customers should have first access to the cabin, absolutely. But we got to find ways, and we're working, doing a lot in the rebuild of the airports, LaGuardia, JFK, LA, Seattle, to get better boarding processes in place. So the queue is a short-term measure. Long-term, I think we got to find ways to get the entire cabin boarded more efficiently.
Can I offer a suggestion? I mean, it seems to me that the airlines incentivize people to drag all of their belongings with them on the plane so they don't have to pay $25 or $35 to check a bag. I mean, you are incentivizing people to slow the process down. How do you fix that?
Well, about half the customers that check bags actually don't pay for it. And one great way to do it is use the Delta. If you buy a ticket using the Delta co-brand credit cards, you get free bags.
How much does that slow things down, though? I mean, just as somebody who travels a lot, it feels like people.
You know, it really doesn't, Becky.
I check all my bags all the time.
You know, I think the reality is what the industry has to get to, and what Delta is going, is that we have to have customers feel comfortable to check their bags and know they don't need to carry them on board, whether you're paying for them or not, and realize that they're going to be there when we land. We've implemented RFID technology. Our baggage scores are at the best in the industry by a large measure, and just allow technology to take care of the issue rather than people feeling like they have to physically manage it.
What's the cost of baggage handling per bag? I've always been very curious about this.
Cost of baggage handling? I have no idea.
But is it $2? Is it $1? Is it $5?
That's.
Do you really want the bag to be there when you get there? Or, I mean, what type of service are you talking about? You actually expect it to be there when you.
Well, I expect it to be there.
Well, that would cost more. That would obviously.
I mean, do you use an app? I mean, nowadays you can track where your bag is.
No, you absolutely can. So that's actually a huge benefit.
Unfortunately, it's usually not where you are, Phil. That's the.
I mean, listen, it depends on the infrastructure. Atlanta is the biggest airport in the world. We run the biggest baggage operation. I don't know what the actual cost per bag is. But the key is you got to have it when you land.
Right, and there are some airports that's there before me.
If you fly to Newark, your wait for the bag will be longer than your flight.
Hey, Ed, I got a quick question for you.
That's why you ship sticks.
With all the flights you guys are adding, not just you guys, but the industry overall, are you worried that there are certain airports around the country that maybe not at capacity, but you might land and the gate's just not ready yet, and you're waiting out there on the tarmac for a half hour, 40 minutes? Those stories are becoming more common. Are you concerned that we might be seeing at capacity levels at certain airports around the country?
We absolutely are, and we need to modernize the air traffic control systems, which is a big part of the challenge. Hopefully, with the FAA being reauthorized for the next 5 years that we just got done in the current session, we'll start to make some progress in that area.
Just connecting to our last guest, Ed, I don't know that you're here, but he was talking about passive investors and a different issue. But the issue I'm going to raise is, passive investors mean somebody who's not really paying attention to all the fundamentals that you pay attention to and that I think you have every reason to be proud of. So here you are trying to manage this real operation every day and make it profitable, making it profitable. And you're in a market where a lot of investment is not made. How do you stand out in the street as a good performer, not just Delta Airlines, but a good performer in general, in a market that, first of all, has bubbles going on in tech and so forth? Maybe that's about to end, but also so much passive in investing that you wonder who's really paying attention to how well the company's being run for the long run.
Well, it's a great lead, and we're going up Park Avenue. We're going to have an investor presentation. It's going to last 6 hours. We're going to get a lot of coverage out of that. The reality is you got to perform. Delta's been performing like no other airline out there. Our customer satisfaction scores have tripled over the last 5 years in terms of progress. This will be the 4th year in a row this year that we're making $5 billion of profits, returning at 14% return on capital back to our investors, and it's going to stand the test of time. Who can do that through the cycle? And Delta's got a great lead on that.
And it's got to get noticed, not just for Delta, but other well-performing companies. It's sometimes hard to punch through, and you're just being old-fashioned good performer.
Yeah, we do our best. We do our best.